Alright, what's good y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to my story mode. So as you've probably guessed by clicking on this video, yeah, we're still not done talking about Pokemon Legends ZA. I think it's safe to say that I still have a pretty good handful of things that we could still talk about when it comes to this specific topic. And because we have such little information to go on, all we can do is speculate for the time being because we may not see this game for the better part of another year. Which is what brings us here today. I have a very important question to ask regarding Legends ZA. But before that, did you guys so happen to see the community post that I put out a couple of days ago? I asked you guys what Mega Evolutions you would like to see going into Pokemon Legends ZA. Make sure to put down your response in the comment section of that community post and we'll have a video up talking about your responses later this week. Alright, so now that everybody's aware of that, let's ask my question. Is it possible for Pokemon Legends ZA to have multiple storylines? And I know exactly what you're thinking. Soul, this idea absolutely stemmed from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet receiving 3 storylines, didn't it? And if you thought that, you are absolutely wrong. No, I'm just kidding, you're correct. I was thinking about this a lot. On the come up of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, nobody, not a single person on this earth that was a Pokemon fan expected us to have 3 separate storylines in a Pokemon game. After what happened with Sword and Shield, can you really blame anybody? We kind of had the feeling that they could barely focus on 1, let alone 3. However though, if you watched my review for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you would know that I'm fully under the impression that they actually did a pretty damn good job. They actually exceeded my expectations. Try not to overthink that statement, by the way. My expectations for Scarlet and Violet were relatively low, believe it or not. But either way, even just in concept, I think doing 3 storylines like that was a very beneficial way to do it. Not only did it allow us to actually explore the individual characters and let them have a little bit of time in the limelight, but it also got us to explore a lot more of Paldea than we probably would have if we were just doing the gym storyline. I'm not saying that it's perfect by any means. They could obviously still use a little bit of work up in the writers department, but for what it was, I think that they did a really good job with that. And so I thought to myself, is it possible for them to do something like that one more time with Pokemon Legends ZA? Now, of course, we do have to look at the logistics of things. It's very possible that they may just go back to the simple, single storyline that they've always done for Pokemon games. Hell, like they just did for Pokemon Legends Arceus 2 years ago. And if you consider it that way, then yeah, that's absolutely possible. We could be following a very similar path that we followed with the original Pokemon Legends Arceus. However though, there's a couple of things that actually make me doubt that that's what's happening. For one thing, we have to remember, once again, that Pokemon Legends Arceus was most likely made on a whim. I've said multiple times on record that I don't really care much for the storyline of Pokemon Legends Arceus. It felt very weak to me, and it didn't really felt like it went anywhere. However, I feel like that was probably the case because Pokemon Legends Arceus did not start out as a Legends game. It started out as the remakes. They probably did not have as much time as they would have liked to focus on the writing aspect of Pokemon Legends Arceus. After turning over the remake project to ILCA, they probably had a very limited time to turn a concept into something tangible in a couple of months. As an aspiring writer, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's pretty damn hard to write a good story in just a couple of months. By the way, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I don't know how long Legends Arceus was in development for, but I can't imagine it was a very long time, if we're being honest with ourselves. Anyway, the second reason that I believe that it's possible to have multiple storylines is because the development teams obviously have been taking notes from one another. During the development of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, somebody came up with the idea of mass outbreaks. I don't know which team it originated from, but we know one thing for sure. That mechanic ended up as an update in Pokemon Legends Arceus and as a mainline mechanic in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm almost positive that once that idea was pitched, they decided to test the waters with it in Pokemon Legends Arceus. After gaining some pretty relatively positive reception, especially from the shiny hunting community, they probably decided to go ahead and greenlight that for the development during Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, of course, I could be absolutely wrong on this, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because, like I just said, it ended up in both games regardless. Which leads me to believe, if there was positive reception for the multiple storylines in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which there was, why wouldn't they try something like that again? Which leads me into my final point. I believe that they actually have the time to do something like that now. The only thing that we have even relatively close to a release date is 2025. It could be early, it could be mid, it could be late. We don't know. After the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and the reception that they got for those games being a little undercooked, they did hint at a little bit of quality control. This is very obviously proven by the fact that we don't have a Pokemon game coming out at the end of this year. So with the mixture of more development time on their hands and a winning formula, something that worked pretty damn well in their previous game, they have a pretty good deal on their hands. I have no doubt in my mind that there's plenty of other mechanics that this very discussion applies to as well, but we'll get to that. Right now, we're talking about multiple storylines. So I think that at this point I've explained myself decently enough to at least get you to understand why I think this way. I feel like it truly is possible for this to happen. However, if this were to happen, what would the storylines even be? Well, after thinking about it for like a solid 3.5 minutes, I think that I've come up with at least 3 generally solid ideas that would make sense for the storyline of Pokemon Legends ZA. Actually, let's go ahead and change solid to loose. Anyway, the first storyline is obviously going to follow the Pokédex. This would obviously be the storyline in which we meet the tree-named professor that lives in Lumiose City during this time period. And just like any other Pokemon game, we would learn about said professor's very heated passion for their study of Pokemon. Obviously, our character, one way or another, is going to get involved with this professor, prove that we're good with Pokemon, and they're gonna entrust us with their Pokédex. However, in this specific instance, I feel like this is where the progression system is going to come into play, much like it did in Pokemon Legends Arceus. We don't know what time period this game takes place in, so we don't really know how advanced or how much of a concept the Pokédex even is at this point. Cause y'all gotta remember, in Legends Arceus, the Pokédex was literally just a notebook. For the sake of my own sanity, I'm going to assume that this game still, much like its predecessor, takes place in the past. Which means it's very possible and very likely that we'll get another notebook-esque Pokédex to fill in while we're exploring and learning about all of these different Pokemon, and especially about Mega Evolution, because that is definitely going to be a heavy driving force to study for this professor. We're most likely going to be figuring out how Mega Evolution works and how to utilize that for our Pokemon. So yeah, probably the most typical Pokemon storyline that you could ever imagine is most likely going to be one of the 3. Totally fine. The next storyline is probably going to be the meat of the story, which is the redevelopment plan. Pretty much right after the announcement of Pokemon Legends ZA, there were a couple of sources that told us that the game was specifically taking place within Lumiose City. Now personally, I am absolutely a-okay with this because Lumiose City is one of the biggest cities in the entirety of the Pokemon franchise. Even in the game that it was introduced in, we were never actually able to explore the entire thing. So, if there was ever a time for us to fully explore all of the wonders of Lumiose City, it would probably be while we're redeveloping it. Now, of course, we have to keep in mind, the game is still Pokemon. We're not gonna be the ones building the city. No. Of course, there may be plenty of instances in which we're probably going to get like materials and stuff like that for people to build, whether it be for a mainline story quest or for a side quest here and there. But for the most part, it's still Pokemon, so we're probably going to be battling Pokemon, right? I imagine that we're probably going to be clearing out angry Pokemon that have taken over Lumiose City. Or, at the very least, the remains of Lumiose City. There's probably a lot of empty areas, destroyed buildings, stuff that has suffered weather damage and things like that, and Pokemon, wild angry Pokemon, have most likely taken shelter there. So because Pokemon isn't inherently like a violent series, I imagine what we're most likely going to be doing is helping these Pokemon by calming them down first, most likely through battle, and then helping them find some other place to live, whether it be with me on my team, or just some other place outside of Lumiose City. Or hell, maybe we convince the Pokemon to help us after we beat them to actually help rebuild the city so that they can also have a home to live in. Now again, take all of what I'm saying here with a grain of salt because this could absolutely be incorrect. But when you advertise something like a redevelopment plan in the trailers for a game like this, one that most likely takes place in the past, this is the only way I could imagine a storyline like this working. However though, if that was the case, I'm sure that would probably be just the general basis of the idea. I'm sure that they would build a lot more on top of that. I'm not entirely sure how, but somehow, some way, Pokemon will find a way to make it probably interesting. And then my final guess as to what one of the 3 storylines could be is a storyline following AZ. I said this in a video a little while back, but it's very clear that we really don't know all that much about AZ. When Lysander caught him at the end of X and Y, he mentioned the fact that AZ looks just like a king that was around thousands of years ago. Of course, to somebody like Lysander, this guy standing in front of him right now could not be the same king that was around thousands of years ago, because that's just not humanly possible. However, as enjoyers of fiction, both you and I know good and well that AZ most likely was that very same king. What kind of a king he was, where he ruled, we don't know anything about that. Every ounce of story that we know revolving around AZ is solely about the weapon, his best friend, and the war. Because we know that AZ has been wandering the earth for thousands of years, we know that he's going to have a presence in this game somewhere, especially because the title of the game is his name backwards. What his placement is gonna be, I have absolutely no clue. Couldn't even take a guess. However, I have no doubt that him searching for his best friend Floette takes a wild priority over the rebuilding of a city, which is precisely what leads me to believe that AZ is going to have his own separate storyline going on. Again though, don't ask me what that could possibly be. It could be something related to the search for his friend, something about the war possibly, something about him being a king, or something about the weapon that was used to end the war. Hell, for all I know, we could be fighting against the guy. I have absolutely no idea. I highly doubt that, but it's not impossible. You really never know what Pokemon is gonna pull next. Hell, look at Volo. That guy was a shot in the dark, and this is Cynthia's great-great-grand whatever? Are you kidding? Either way, the possibilities are absolutely endless, and there are so many different unique and fun storylines that they could tell in Pokemon Legends ZA, which is why I believe they might do that 3 separate times in one go. If it does happen, cool, awesome, great. They clearly had the blueprints down from Scarlet and Violet to make something like this work, and with the extra year that they have to work on this game, I feel like it could turn into something really spectacular if they take their time with it. I truly don't believe that it is hard at all to top the storyline, quote unquote, that was available in Pokemon Legends Arceus. So if they do this right, this could be a very, very strong multi-storyline game. But hey, that's just me. Alright, so that just about does it for this one. I'm so sorry because in the midst of recording, like halfway through, I forgot to make my weird, gross, like food joke that I usually do, because those have been fun. But I'm not gonna make it now, but I'll get you guys in the next one, don't worry. But either way, I think that just about wraps it up for this one. So I'm passing the mic, I'm sliding it like a drink from across the bar over to you, and you guys tell me, what do you guys think about the possibility of a multi-storyline happening in Pokemon Legends ZA? Do you think that it's possible? Do you think that we could get some really good storylines? Do you think that they're actually working on it as we speak, and that they really did take example from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet because it did work there? Or do you think that I'm way off base? We're probably gonna have one dedicated storyline that's gonna flow into different storylines, but in one, straight line essentially. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear that it's time to skedaddle. So I would like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time.